So today's video is going to run through 10 simple steps that I would highly encourage aspiring property investors to focus on if you're new to property investing and you want to not only make profit when investing, but you also want to reduce your level of risk too. And please be sure to take notes and really sit down and ask yourself some of the questions I'm going to pose in this video, as getting it right at the beginning will save you so much time, money, and of course headaches. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about is resources, and I'll speak about this over on my Skillset class over here, and it essentially requires you to look at what you have available in terms of your skill set, your time, and also your finances. And some questions I would highly urge you all to ask yourself and answer is as follows. So looking at skill set, firstly, what do you currently know about property investing? What can you do well? What value can you add? And where do you lack expertise? How can you find out more about the skills you lack? Can you learn these skills or acquire them through maybe paying people or working with other people, etc., etc. These are the kind of questions you need to be asking. Now, in terms of time, how much time can you dedicate to finding the right properties? Do you need to rely on a deal sourcer perhaps to find properties? Do you know what a good deal sourcer is? Do you want a project that maybe you can renovate or build out? Or do you simply want to jump into one that pays you from day one, i.e. a ready to go buy to let? And finally, when looking at finances, contrary to popular belief, you can't buy a property with no money down, regardless of what people out there will try and sell you or tell you in order to pay for their services. You either need your own money or you need somebody else's as well. So these are the questions that you need to be asking yourself. How much money do I have readily available now to invest? How much can I potentially raise either through selling or utilizing current assets that you may have? Or how can I raise money from other people? Is this even possible? How can I learn this? Now that smoothly brings us over to point 2, finance. Now once you have some idea of the finance available to yourselves, either via your own source of funds or external people, you need to now understand how far can you stretch that and how much buying power do you have out there in the property market. And a simple way of doing this is by speaking to a mortgage broker. But please note that not all mortgage brokers are built equal. And I'd highly urge speaking to some brokers who work with property investors, as they may be able to give you better, more creative solutions. Now, why this is useful is because it will simply tell you how much you can offer on properties. And if you get yourself a mortgage in principle or an agreement in principle, basically the same thing, you can essentially give an estate agent or a vendor more confidence that you have the funds and the backing of a potential lender when you put down your offer. Now moving over to strategies, property strategies, there's so many of these, and identifying your property strategy is crucial. So for that reason, you need to decide, what do you want to do? Do you want to do assisted sales? Do you want to do rent to rent, buy to lets, flips, commercial to residential, maybe even land development? Or maybe you just want to do lease options. Now once you have this set, you now want to move over to your area and identify where you're going to implement this property strategy. And this is really crucial, but I have to tell you something before you rush off and start investing right now. Every strategy mentioned earlier works, but not every strategy works in every single area. So there may be instances that you may not be able to carry out in the area that you're familiar with. It would be brilliant if we could all invest where we live or around the corner doing the types of property strategies that we want. But sadly, that's not always the case. You may therefore need to adapt, and if you are having to adapt, you'll need to ask yourself the following questions. How feasible is this for me to invest remotely? Can I manage the project X miles away from home? Do I want that stress? Or is it better suited to me, given my current circumstances, to just work closer in my particular area but change my strategy? Next up we have learn. Now it's very important to fill those skill gaps that you may currently have. It is why I try and do videos like these as much as possible to help you guys not only learn the basics but also avoid making the same mistakes that I've been making for the last 10 plus years. Moving on, networking. Now networking is part and parcel of property investing, but it's not always for everyone. I am the anxious investor for a reason. I have anxiety, and naturally I am an introvert. So the thought of networking rarely gets me excited to jump out of bed in the morning. However, you all have probably heard that your network is your net worth, and the more people you have access to and you can get to know, the more probability you have of getting further in this game. You see, it's important to build up key figures in your networking journey, such as solicitors, brokers, builders, handymen, estate agents, letting agents, investors, and even just friends in property. You see, property can be a very lonely place, and it is for that reason sometimes having someone just to bounce ideas off or connect with from time to time can be massively advantageous. Next up, agents. You have to get to know your estate agents, and you must also get to know letting agents too. Even if you feel that you're going to manage the properties yourself, or you're buying solely direct to vendor and you're trying to bypass estate agents, I would highly recommend, from experience, and once you have clarity on the earlier steps, you start to build a rapport with agents and really start to get to know them, and more importantly, let them get to know you and what you're about too. Next up, we have desktop analysis. I've done a class here on how I run through a desktop analysis of a property, and I'm open to doing more if you guys need. But you need to be able to do the basics, such as setting up alerts on Zoopla and Rightmove, analysing comparables, calculating the returns on your investments. And you really want to start to get familiar with the numbers, because as good as you may be with DIY or raising finance from investors, if you're not good with a calculator, you may well end up in trouble in property investing. Remember, offering with logic, i.e. having done the numbers rather than emotion, is crucial. So if you view a property for £200,000 but recognise it only makes financial sense at £180,000 because maybe it needs some work doing to it, or you feel that it's been inflated by the vendor or agent, then you are within your rights to offer £180,000. Don't feel bad, don't feel like you can't do it. It's your money at the end of the day. And remember, everything's negotiable. And that moves us on to offering on every single property. Now, the last time I checked, it was a legal obligation for agents to notify vendors of any offers that you put down. And you can do this verbally, although I always like to put it in via email to ensure that the offer has been sent, and plus I have the proof too. Now, the reason I say offer on every property is because you don't actually know what someone is willing to accept. I've had some of my best property deals well under the asking price, and this is because often people have a price they are willing to sell it for to solve their needs, but they don't always say that at the start. The agent may have advised them to try and get more for the property. Maybe they wanted a bigger commission, or they may try and be cheeky themselves and think, what would happen if I just ask for a little bit more? So it's always worth putting down an offer with an explanation, just so you don't come across completely cheeky, as it shows you've also taken in some consideration on every single property. And remember, the worst they can say is no, but at least you tried, and you don't run the risk of not asking but then realizing somewhere in the future that maybe somebody else got it for a similar price or even cheaper. And number 10, have at least 2 exits. This is so important and often overlooked. If you fail to flip a property, what's your contingency? Have you even thought about this? If you are looking to rent a property out but suddenly you need the cash in the next few months, are you able to cash out and not put yourself in financial difficulty? Now, the most common exits is to either refinance or sell a property, and running figures on both of these options are very, very important just to mitigate the risks that could prop up. Now, if you stuck around, a bonus one I'm going to give you all is contingency. Contingency with time, renovation costs, and also the end value as well. This is key, guys. What happens if you run over time? What are the costs associated with that? What's the implications? What happens if you realize you need to spend more on the renovation? Can you afford that? Did you even factor that in at the start? What happens if the end value you wanted to flip the project at or refinance it, for example, falls short? Have you even considered this? Have you run the numbers to think about this? If not, then that is a job that you guys really need to do and plan before you start investing. And with that, my friends, I just want to say thank you when you could have been doing anything but you chose to spend a few moments with me. And that, wow, that makes you pretty awesome. So until next time, guys.